Good evening, ladies and gents, and welcome to another Laois News Podcast. And I'm delighted to be joined by one of my usual co-hosts on the news podcast, Trudy Carmody. Trudy, how are you
Hi, John.
this
How are you?
Great.
And you?
I'm brilliant, and I'm doubly delighted to see that Evan Tracy has come over from the sports department.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Evan. Great to have you. And we're delighted to be joined again by Dr. Ciarán Reilly. Ciarán, how are you?
Good, John. Thanks very much for having me on.
Yeah, I was thinking today, you were on, it was like back in the summer you were on.
Yeah, back in May, I think I was on talking about the book Capard.
Capard House and Rosenellis. And could you have imagined then that 8 months later, actually longer, 10 months later, we'd still be in the situation we were in back in May, or even worse?
Yeah, and I don't think anyone could have envisaged that at the time, but I suppose it was a little bit easier back in the spring, rolling into the summer. But it's a lot more difficult now when people, because it's winter time, and I suppose the numbers are up as well. So, but please God, we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, we are. It's slowly but surely we'll get out of this, hopefully for good. And Ciarán, we have you on this evening because we want to talk about, and we have to talk about, possibly, well, I'll put it out there, Ciarán, you can knock me down if I'm wrong, possibly the most famous Irish American from Laois ever.
Yeah, well, he's definitely that, John. He's probably one of the most important Irish immigrants of the 19th to 20th century, or indeed of any period. He's not forgotten. I suppose that's the first thing that I want to start by saying, that sometimes we talk about people that, and historians are guilty of that at times, that they will say that people are forgotten because they've stumbled upon something interesting themselves. But he's not remembered, I suppose, and he's not well known even in his own locality.
Exactly. And of course, to let the viewers know, Ciarán, we're talking about William Grace.
That's right. William Russell Grace, born in Ballylinan in 1832, and went on to be, as you say, the most famous, or one of the most famous, most important Irish Americans in the latter half of the 19th century.
Yeah, I mean, when we say important, we are not exaggerating, because go on, tell me why he's so important.
Yeah, like there's just so many facets of his life, and I was even just thinking about this earlier today, that there's possibly things that I'll forget to say in the next few minutes about him. He was himself a famine immigrant. He left home at 14 years of age in 1846 for America, tried his hand at a couple of different things in New York, and returned to Ireland 2 years later in 1848, taking the family by surprise. The family at that stage had moved to Dublin. They'd fallen on, I suppose, harder times themselves. Now, they weren't, at the bottom level of poverty by any means, but they had hit upon hardened times and had moved to Dublin, where James Grace, William Grace's father, had got a job with the Inland Revenue. And young William Grace, when he returned to Ireland in the midst of the famine, he couldn't settle. And, his next project, he was always thinking ahead and looking ahead to his next project. And that actually commenced in 1850 when he began shipping other Irish famine immigrants to Canada and America, and then later to Peru along with his father. I wonder, should I just go through and tell you about him first and then...
Well, yeah, but sorry to cut across you, and I'm hoping now Trudy and Evan will jump in this as well. I mean, reading his life story, I mean, we have it in our minds that entrepreneurs are a recent phenomenon, but he was an entrepreneur, wasn't he?
He was, absolutely. And I suppose in looking at that, the shipping of immigrants from Ireland, he saw a huge market. He was one of 21 shipping agents located on the docks in Liverpool, who had offices in Dublin as well, who saw the opportunity to profit and to make money from that. Now, what sets William Grace apart from others at the time was the conditions in which the people sailed. We have this image of the coffin ship, people, huddled together in masses on board the ships heading to America and Canada, Australia, and so on, poorly provisioned, illness and sickness at sea, many dying at sea, in fact, particularly the ones that headed for Canada in 1847. But what sets Grace apart is that the provisions that he provides for the people, and if you want, I can go into detail about that, just looking at it today. 25 pounds in weight of biscuits, 10 pounds of flour, 10 pounds of beef or pork, sugar, tea, access to ranges and ovens on the ship to cook the materials. So William Grace had a great track record for getting people to the destination alive, safe and well, and then they made their way in their new host country. So that sets him apart.
Ciarán, the other thing that William Russell Grace is a pet project of mine, and I've been researching him a long time as well. But I like all of what you're saying, and I won't argue a single thing. But I'd like to highlight the point: he was only 20.
Yeah,
he was only 14 when he ran without permission. Came back 2 years later and went with Daddy and did all the boats and the Peru thing and all the rest of it. But even at that stage in 1950, when he started that, he was only 18.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't an old man. And for him to think that kindly and to allow, to have the people arriving safe, well and fed, not either dead, half dead, or starving, for a young man to think of all of that, I think credit for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He was an entrepreneur. He done, just by getting the people wanted to leave, and he was providing a way for that. And he also wrote to many of the workhouses in the south and the southeast of the country as well, to relieve the pressure on the workhouses that these people could be shipped. And he didn't just abandon them on the other side. There's evidence that several of the Waterford passengers from Waterford workhouse in 1850, 1851 got sick in Quebec, and William Grace actually paid for their hospital provision at the time out of his own pocket, and he was never reimbursed for it. Others just dumped them on the other side of the Atlantic and away with them.
May I ask, what inspired you to look into him?
Well, I suppose I'm just interested in this aspect of somebody that left Ireland during the famine, and in fact, I've only recently been pouring into more detail on this shipping of famine immigrants that he done in 1850, 51, and 52. But just fascinated by the story of somebody so young, as Trudy says, heading for America, coming back. The coming back bit itself is remarkable, because
nobody ever came back.
No, they just simply don't come back.
And he didn't just come back. He took Daddy when the family had fallen. We won't say hard times, but harder times. And he took Daddy with him and set up this amazing business. He was nicknamed the Pirate of Peru at that age, and it wasn't a derogatory name either. To do that during a famine at a young age, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's you say he goes to Peru with his father, and what they did actually was they decided that they would advertise for immigrants to go with them. So they actually rounded up, for want of a better term, 174 people from Laois and Carlow, many others from Ballylinan, and headed for Peru. He stayed in Peru, sets up this business with the Bryce brothers in 1854. His father doesn't stick it in Peru and decides to return to Ireland with his wife and daughter. But many of the immigrants do. They do stay there. And, I think this is just a fascinating, we hear all the time about America and Canada and Australia. I'm also very keenly interested in the Irish immigrants that go to South Africa at this time. So Peru is another destination that we just don't hear enough about. And it's just another, I think, fascinating side of the famine story to tell.
Absolutely. So are you saying that there's a little corner of Peru that will forever be Laois?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're
taking over, John.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Didn't know anything about that.
So, but that's only the beginning.
I know. Incredible man.
Then he turned 21, John.
He conquered one world, and then he turned around and he conquered another world.
And then had his 21st. Yeah.
And his story then gets, by any stretch of the imagination, even more extraordinary.
Yeah. He then sets, or he goes into business first of all with Bryce, the Bryce brothers, English brothers in Peru, in a place called Cuyao, and the Bryce brothers are only really interested in providing provisions for ships which are coming into the port of Cuyao. But William Grace sees an opportunity actually to start shipping from Peru to America, and in particular to start shipping guano, which is bird dung, which was in an abundant supply in Peru. It was more important to the people there than gold or silver or anything else, any other commodity. And it's used as a fertilizer. And in fact, it's been used in Ireland. It's been shipped from Peru to Ireland in the 1830s and 1840s in small quantities. But America is looking for it in large numbers. And that's how he sets up. He eventually buys out the Bryce brothers in 1865, by which time he moves to New York. And at that stage, he's become a millionaire. And it allows him then to focus on other things, including politics.
At 33.
At 33, still a young man. Yeah.
That's the point. Yeah. To have accomplished so much, and a company that's still going today.
Absolutely, they're still in existence today. A massive company.
17 or 18 million that company made in 2019.
Yeah, and
madness.
They've offices throughout the world, and I think about 40 different countries at this stage.
Wow.
I think in terms of history, people like this are overshadowed because it's normally always about debt and how many lives were lost and money lost, and it's never about the people who helped others.
That's a fair point,
Evan. Like, I've never heard of it before.
Yeah.
Discussing it now.
I think in terms of the Great Famine, when we're talking and reading and watching about what happened at that time, you're correct. We're very much focused on the dead and the immigrants. I suppose he is an immigrant himself and moves other immigrants then, but we don't talk about survivors. And what has triggered all this for me and in the most recent past is the focus that's been placed on Joe Biden. And his Irish ancestry, and maybe we'll come back to that at the end. But I met Joe Biden in 2016 when he visited Ireland, visited Mayo, and that's the point I was getting across to him is his family, his ancestors were survivors.
Yes,
and they're survivors for different reasons, and they had different experiences in Louth and Mayo and in Galway during the famine. And you are correct, Evan. Grace is a survivor, and he helps others survive as well.
Yeah. And we're only a small little county in the middle, and he's made a huge impact. And there's a lot of people that survived the famine, and not just survived it, but did good.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean him. I mean the people he brought over there. Yeah. They had their own lives as well, and he would have impacted them. Like you'll go on to say, I'll leave you go on to say other things he did as a politician and a philanthropist as well. Because as you said, at the phenomenal age of 33, in 1865, he had money to spend, and he spent it. Amazingly, like it's just.
And he doesn't forget Ireland. Like he's remembered as a philanthropist and a great. He done great things in America and in Peru, but like he doesn't forget Ireland. I should say he returns to Laois in 1862, or Queen's County as it was then, because he's told actually in 1862 when he was 30 years of age that he had Bright's disease, and that he had very little time to live. So he decided to head for Ireland from Peru. In the end, he lives 41 more years and packs so much into it. And he received, I believe, a kind of a hero's welcome when he came back to Ballylinan, because, and Laois in general, because, you know, at that stage he'd made his fortune, he'd done good, he'd brought these people out, and he was remembered.
And letters probably came home from the people in Peru and in America when he, from 65 on, when he had people there, he would have influenced. So the stories would have filtered back. I have a question. His dad came back. He didn't stay. He only stayed a few years in Peru. What happened to the rest of the family? As far as I heard, there's some of the family still over in Ballylinan, but I'm unsure. I haven't looked at that side of it. What happened then? They moved to Dublin, you said initially.
They moved to Dublin, yeah, and I think they went back to Dublin when they came back to Ireland. William Grace himself, his daughter died, and they lost another child during that short period that he was back in Laois.
Oh, wow.
I believe they're buried locally. I've still to see that. Hopefully, when the lockdown ends, I'll take a trip over there and have a look. But yeah, he returns to America then, and it's a little while after his political career, as I say, kicks off. But he doesn't forget Ireland. That's the point I was going to make. In 1879 and 1880, there's another famine after 3 years of disastrous wet summers and a failure of the harvest, particularly in the west of Ireland. There, hundreds of thousands of people are starving, and there's a ship which sails from America, the Constellation, and huge resources have been gathered in New York and in different parts of America for this. But 1/4 of all that was on the ship, I think it was 3,300 barrels of foodstuff and clothes. 1/4 was given by Grace, and he also donated other sums of money at that time as well for famine relief in Ireland.
It's incredible.
Wow.
Incredible.
Yeah. And
he made a huge difference here and abroad.
Yeah, and that's again, it's like that famine of 1879, 1880. It kind of gets lost in the narrative of the land war which ensues then in the early 1880s, which pitches tenants versus landlords. But definitely,
that's true. It's not something we're ever even taught in school. And if you ask my kids, the only famine they really know about is 1845, like
yeah.
1880, and there was previous famines to that as well, smaller, leading up to it as well. They're just not discussed,
Yeah.
Now maybe that's a good thing, as Evan says. Maybe we've enough death to be going on with from the big one, But yeah, the 1880 one finished off a lot of people.
It did, and it caused massive immigration again. It's a never-ending stream of immigration for the last 20, 30 years of the 19th century.
Yeah. Like when you put it in, when you think about it, we've never got back to pre-famine population levels.
No, I
Could
think
we cope? Could we cope with those numbers if we did, John? Imagine what the broadband would be like then.
Well, we had over 8 million. I think almost 8.5 million. On the island, we're nowhere close to that. We're getting there, but
yeah, I think we're the only country in Europe, I think, that isn't at its 1840 levels of population.
Yeah. We're scattered to the four winds.
Yeah.
We're scattered to the four winds. And Ciarán, arguably, you could argue the case that his political career was even more successful than his business career.
Yeah, like he becomes mayor of New York in 1880, and he's the first Catholic. He's the first Irish mayor, and he's the first Irish Catholic, and that was a huge moment in American politics. The first Catholic admitted to the Senate in New York or in America had occurred 60 years previous to that. He was actually an Offaly man. So they got there first, but it took 60 years kind of to make that next gap or that next jump. And he was opposed. His running for office in 1880, he was opposed on the grounds that he was a Catholic, but he got there. And in the 2 years that he served in his first term, he was very successful. He broke up, a I suppose the badder side of politics that was prevalent at the time. He broke up what was known as the Louisiana lottery and a lot of vice in politics as well. And he was deemed to have been very successful in his first term as mayor between 1880 and 1882. And then he came back and he served.
Why he lost it then, because he didn't get re-elected. So any ideas what happened?
I think one of the things that he tried to do was he tried to restructure the Democratic Party, his own party. He wasn't happy with the I suppose the structure and the way they went about things. So he actually made a lot of enemies within his own party and within the Republican Party. And he lost out then at the next election. But
that would make sense.
He returned then 2 years later in 1884 as an independent. So he had cut his ties with the Democratic Party and served then for 2 years until 1886. And it's during that time that he actually, on behalf of the people of New York, received the Statue of Liberty in 1885 when it arrived. Of course, it wasn't unveiled until the following year by President Grover Cleveland, but Grace was present at the unveiling. He was one of the prominent dignitaries there. So, even that iconic symbol of freedom and liberty in America that we're all familiar with, and even small children will pick that out and will know what it is. You have a Laois connection to that as well.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
You think he's not honoured enough in Laois?
Anywhere, Evan, for that matter.
Yeah, well, I suppose I know there are people that are trying very hard to have him remembered. And I think it must be 5 or 6 years ago, a delegation went from Laois County Council to New York and met with people there about it. But he definitely, I think, should be remembered in some way. And I've been writing recently about different emigrants of the same kind of stature, and just recently about John Gately Downey, who was the mayor of California or the governor of California, just about a decade before Grace was mayor of New York. And he's remembered in County Roscommon, in the village that he came from. There was a bust or a statue erected there about 3 or 4 years ago of him. And you venture into other parts of the country as well, and you'll see, like in Waterville, there's a statue of Charlie Chaplin, who holidayed in Waterville.
Yes.
So does William Grace deserve a statue in Ballylinan or some sort of formal recognition? I think he does, and perhaps wider in the county as well.
He saved an awful lot of people's lives. He helped them to emigrate to Peru and to Chile, not just Peru, to the States. He set up that school for immigrant women in New York. He he took receipt of the Statue of Liberty from the French. He changed a phenomenal amount of crookedness that was going on in New York and reformed the area. And a lot of what the reformations he did are still being applied in America or in New York today. He didn't just do one thing. It was the first ever one-stop ship to Peru, steamship from Ireland to Peru. That's in itself a phenomenon. Then there's the business. Then there's the famine help. Then he came back and helped with that famine. Then he changed politics. Then he received the Statue of Liberty. Like, and else? Do you know what I mean? What else do you have to do?
Yeah, I mean, for a normal person, just to succeed then in American politics as a Roman Catholic was was a mind-blowing achievement, because the anti-Catholic prejudice and bias was blatant, and it was vicious, and it was all-pervading. Wouldn't you agree, Ciarán?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, it was a huge achievement. And of course, like he wasn't mayor of New York, as one of the most important areas in the country at that time or at any time.
Jesus, even now.
Yeah, so it's not like it wasn't a job way out west somewhere where he was easily forgotten about. But
no, he wasn't managing a little village somewhere
Yeah,
that nobody knows about.
You mentioned the Grace Institute that he sets up. He sets up a Grace Institute with his brother, Michael Grace. And, I think that gave free tuition to women in New York. And it's still in existence today, which is, in itself is a huge achievement as well.
A lot of what he started is still in existence today, which is testament to the man, his work ethic, his values, his persistence, everything about him. Yeah. And it's not just to succeed, but to continue to succeed.
Absolutely.
100 years, 110 years, 115 years after he died, it's still going and making more and more and more money.
Yeah.
That's...
And he had another brother, Morgan Grace, who went to New Zealand, who sat in the New Zealand Parliament.
Wow.
So another link to explore there. I don't know too much about him, but
I don't know anything about him either.
He played an important. He went as a British Army soldier to New Zealand, but wasn't terribly impressed by the British thereafter with the treatment of some of the native Maori people. So he's, an important figure there too in the late 19th century.
I was thinking of Peter Fintan Lawler. He's Australia, I don't know why, because that would have been a similar kind of a time frame. So they wouldn't have met.
I would argue, ladies and gents, we need a couple of William Graces now.
Off you go, John. This podcast is a start, don't you think?
Absolutely. We definitely need him during these troubled times. Or men and women of his ilk, of his.
For sure.
Of his.
So, Ciarán, are you going to do a book on William Ciarán?
Well, no, I suppose there's been a book written, published some years ago about a merchant adventure. It doesn't have much about his Irish background. For me personally, I think the story of the famine, his involvement in the famine and shipping immigrants to America and Canada is something that I want to explore further.
I wonder, a question. And I haven't investigated this. Maybe you've come across it. Epic is the Famine Museum in Dublin. I've been more than once. I can't say I remember seeing anything about him there. And I say that waiting to be corrected. To have him in there would be a huge start.
Massive. It would be. Now, I've been through the Epic, and I was thinking about that myself today. Was he there? I went through the Epic Museum.
I can't remember.
I can't say whether he was or not. I know they changed the information around so often.
I know the Lawler Fitzpatricks are there from a Laois point of view. And when you're somewhere like that, you're always conscious of looking for people where you're from. And I had the children there, and I was, on the other occasion, I was there as a tour guide. But the Fitzpatricks, the Lawler Fitzpatricks were the only ones I remember coming across. But I think that'd be a great start. It would be. It'd be huge. But I think first of all, he needs to be commemorated in his own locality, sure. and perhaps further afield. Then, like the Peru side of things is huge, given the fact that he was a consultant effectively to the Peruvian government in the 1870s. And when war broke out with Peru and Chile in 1879, or in the late 1870s, he financially backed them and supplied ships and munitions to the war effort. And when Peru lost that war, it was Grace that financially helped them recover, effectively bailed them out. Now, he was very well rewarded for that. He received gold or mines and railway shares and substantial tracts of land. I get the feeling that wouldn't have been why he helped. It wouldn't have been. I get the feeling it wouldn't have been why he helped. That he just helped. No, again, he owed so much, I suppose, to Peru. The
the shipping was the key thing. They needed to control that. So there's a huge link to Peru there. I'm just thinking as well, like there's the Peruvian embassy in Ireland here should be interested in that story as well.
Do you know, is he remembered, commemorated in Peru or New York in any big way?
I can't tell you about Peru. I'm not sure whether he is or not. In New York, no, I don't. Well, obviously the company still exists. The Grace Institute still exists, and both are, I suppose, keen on the history of their founder. His headstone in I think it's in Holy Cross Cemetery is modest enough. Just W.R. Grace and his 1832 to 1904. Doesn't tell us in any great detail. Of course, you couldn't put all of what he did on a headstone anyways.
No.
It's just...
No.
I've only given you the tip of it now tonight.
We do the biggest headstone ever.
Sorry, Evan.
Have you considered getting in contact with, say, the county council to get him commemorated?
Well, I'm hoping that coming on and talking to yourselves tonight will start that conversation. That people, listeners, watchers, people that are watching and listening in, will be curious about the story. Will want to know more, and will want to actually get that done. I'm sure there are community groups there in that part of Laois that might drive this on, might give the county council a nudge in the right direction. Of course, there's great work being done there at Heritage in the county, so maybe this is something that will be of interest.
We could call on Catherine. Catherine is phenomenal. She's one of the best heritage officers in the country, in fairness. And that's not just giving praise for the sake of praise. She is one of the best heritage officers in the country. But
just to let the viewers know, that's Catherine Casey we're talking about.
Yes, Catherine Casey is the heritage officer for Laois. Very well respected all around the country, and she is phenomenal in any suggestion that is given, and she's always full of help. But you know what? You're right, Ciarán. If all we can get done, and I don't mean that trivially, at the very least, if we instigate a conversation that at the moment, as a homeschooling person, people will then do a project on William Russell Grace with their children. Absolutely. And learn about him, because it's important to learn about these people, because if he's seen as the standard that I want to achieve, well, then I'm going to achieve it. If he becomes the norm, then let's all go shoot for the start, because he did.
Yes.
14 getting on a boat on your own to America. Oh, wow.
Incredible. If
one of my kids did that, I think I'd kill them. If they ever came back, they'd be dead.
It's great man. What a great man. What a great man.
But it would be a huge opportunity, Ciarán.
Yeah, I think it's a story that needs to be told, and what better way to teach history than at a local level? Absolutely.
Well, tonight's a great start.
As a tour guide, I don't tell history. I don't do academia. In particular, I do heritage in schools. I don't do academic stuff. I don't dole out facts. But by my nature, I'm the only woman in the room tonight. I'm nosy. And the most important story, and the one that I think people relate to mostly, is the story about the people. It just happens to involve bits of history here and there. Yeah. And what he did as a person is phenomenal as a person. And if you were getting your child to research this as a schools project at home, they're learning about him. But by the way, you just learned when the Statue of Liberty arrived in America and from whom. You learned that they have a mayor of New York. Why wasn't he a Lord Mayor? Find that out. Then the shipping industry. Oh my God, only boats started in 1865 or whatever it was, going to Peru. There's extra information within the story that revolves around a person.
Yes.
and it's relatable when it's local. You do not have to pick a huge historic event to make it interesting or relevant or educational.
Yeah.
So we're calling on all homeschoolers now. Great project.
Absolutely.
Get cracking on this project. And when you do finish the project, don't be shy about it. Send it in to the Laois people. We'll put it up.
That would be amazing, Jan.
With your teacher's approval, obviously.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. It makes sense. And of course, the more we can do on our end, we will do to get him commemorated.
Absolutely.
And remembered. Now, everyone, we have to fast forward to the modern day, and we're talking 2021 in Laois. We're still talking about the digital divide, ladies and gents, because our wonderful co-host Hannah Cahill cannot be with us tonight because the broadband where she is in Rathdowney just isn't good enough. Hello, Government of Ireland. Hello, Laois County Council. 2021, we have a lot of people, not just Hannah, around our county, and they are second-class citizens in our digital economy. Not good enough.
No.
Discuss.
Absolutely not.
Discuss.
Hannah is a budding and amazing for anyone who listens in regularly. She is a budding and amazing journalist. She will do phenomenal things and does not need something as ridiculous as something that everyone else expects to just have, not at her fingertips.
Yes. Yeah.
It's disgraceful.
It's disgraceful.
Unnecessary.
It is. And of course, the irony is 2020, I'm looking at the stats here, 2020 was a real digital year in Ireland.
Yeah.
For example, a couple of silly little facts here for you. So in 2020, 65,000 .ie websites were registered.
Wow.
That's 30% up on 2019. And in May 2020, 7,003 .ie websites were registered. And then we have, of course, we got the figures then from local enterprise office here in Laois about all the local businesses who have been helped get their websites either up or get them upgraded with the Trading Online voucher. We have all the figures there up on the screen as we speak for that wonderful scheme. And I have to say, the Laois people, we took advantage of that scheme. It's a wonderful, wonderful scheme. Have to thank Linda and all our colleagues in the local enterprise office for getting those facts together.
I'll absolutely do the same, John. I'll add to that. Experiencing Ireland took advantage of the Trading Online voucher as well. And the team of people in the local enterprise that organised that Trading Online voucher and the other vouchers that were going as well, and the training and mentoring sessions, they pull out the stops. But not one of those websites could have been Hannah's.
Well, there is a very valid point because she can't get online. Now she was wonderful there last week. She was on our talk show last week, and of course, technically because she had to use the data from her phone as well as her so-called internet. We won't even call it internet because it's a joke. She's been held back.
I upgraded my internet, as you know, John, recently in the last 3 months, and up until that moment, I now pay €50 a month, just for broadband, and it's not as fast as what someone would have in the town, but the speed I had up until 3 months ago was actually slower than dial-up. So dial-up was 2.6 or 7 megabytes of an upload speed or whatever. I had, on a good day, 1.7, 1.8. I have 2 college students, 1 secondary school student, and I'm homeschooling another guy, and I'm in college, and I'm working on genealogy projects and researching.
Yeah.
on a speed that's slower than dial-up.
Yeah, it's...
Now, like if I compare to someone in the town that can avail of a package, if I was to put my television and I had Sky on that, I'm looking at another €50. If I'm looking at a landline, I'm probably looking at another €50. So I'm looking at €150 at least of a bill for something that someone in Dublin can get for 10 times the speed and a third of the price.
Yeah,
that's unfair. My children in secondary school are lacking in resources.
Yeah, well, it's a very valid point, because I'm here in Kilminchy in Portlaoise. I'm paying $50 a month, but I'm getting the fastest broadband, a landline, for the company, and the television for €50 a month.
And I'm on Sairview. I have no landline because I couldn't afford both, and I have €50 a month broadband, and my speed can sometimes go between about 10 and 30.
Ciarán, like, is this affecting you?
Oh, well,
or people you know?
To be honest, I don't, because we're lucky enough in Kildare here. We have very good broadband. It's not an issue. I'm amazed actually to hear. Laois wouldn't be somewhere that I would have classed as being, lacking in this department. It's only within an hour and 15 minutes of Dublin. You're there. I'm amazed.
Well, the national broadband plan is being rolled out as we speak. They're in Stradbally.
Which is huge.
And
I put my address into that, and apparently I'm on the list, but it could be 2 years. But a few years ago, I got a phone call from my mother, and there was somebody on Mount Everest, at Base Camp Mount Everest, and she rang. And the only thing she said, and then hung up laughing, was, ha, 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 they have internet.
Yeah. So
and halfway up Mount Everest, they had internet, and I didn't.
Yes.
Go figure.
Evan, does this affect you?
On this discussion so far that we've had this evening, at least 3 times has my Wi-Fi nearly went, and I've had to use data.
Wow.
Yeah, and Hannah's in the same boat as you.
Several times I've been sitting here and it's freezing and it's not working properly. And where I live, there's only one company that will actually do the internet.
Me too.
Yeah, well, see, I look at you and I look at Hannah, and we're talking about the future Claire Burns and Brian Dobsons.
Absolutely.
And you're being held back.
Yeah.
Like
our children are being held back in some areas.
I do online school during the day, and there's several times I have to message my teacher. I can't attend the class or that because it just simply won't work because of the Wi-Fi.
That's not fair.
Yeah.
No.
That's not fair.
I'm not being flippant, but it needs someone to take it by the
by the horns.
Short and curlies.
Yeah.
I'd go to upload photos onto my phone through the laptop. It could take anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes just for about 5 to 10 photos.
Yeah. And my kids go into the shopping centres to do that. It's not right.
No.
Everyone else from a college, a research, progression of Evan and Hannah's generation to businesses. How the hell can Laois attract businesses to here? Say, oh, come on here, it's a great place to work, there's loads of place, there's loads of things to do, it's ideal for your business. We're on the road to Dublin, Cork, Limerick, Galway, centre of the country, perfect. Just no broadband, lads.
No.
Now, that said, I go to Paddy Buggy in the Wed Mill. There's the one in Portlaoise, John, with you guys, and there's Mount Rath, and that is phenomenal.
Yeah, and there are more hubs being rolled out. We have to say that. But what do our children and what do our homeschoolers do in the meantime in rural areas where there's no broadband? What did they do? What did they do? How do they operate? The whole premise of homeschooling is that everyone has broadband, And I can tell, Ciarán, you're amazed, you're shocked by this.
Yes, it's just, even what Evan says there about uploading photographs, they just don't have those issues. It's just amazing. I would have, if you said to me that you doubt those problems are in the mountains in Donegal or in Kerry or Mayo or somewhere, I'd say, yeah, fair enough, that they can't get access to it. But that's...
Yeah. This is 75 miles from O'Connell Street in Dublin.
Yeah.
That's it.
In Evan's case, even less.
Yeah.
Like, why should students be at an unfair disadvantage just because they live out in the countryside?
Absolutely.
Education-wise.
Yes.
And entrepreneurial.
Yeah. And you know what? They're trying to encourage people to stay in the country, and they're completely gobsmacked as to why, for a long time now, for a few generations, that always the next generation leave. Why would you stay?
Michael Grace, William's brother, was asked one time, would he return to Ireland, and he said no way, that Ireland was full of hardship and it rained half the year. So maybe he had he was onto the right thing.
Yeah, but the flip side of that, Ciarán, I know where he was coming from. The flip side of that is the talent we've exported around the world. I mean, the genius of our people, like per capita. I mean, give yourselves an hour, you can recite the names of probably at least 100 famous Irish people.
Yeah.
Like, can you name 100 famous Belgians?
No.
Even 10? Even 5? No.
I sat down a couple of years ago and I wrote down a list of people from Laois, specifically Laois, that have done something famous, infamous, of note, people of note who have made a difference either here locally in Laois, nationally or internationally. 2 A4 pages, just a list of names.
Yes.
Just this one county.
One county.
That's huge.
We're
William Russell Grace is up the top. He's one of the up the tops. Yeah. But there's a huge amount of people from this county that made a difference. And I think it's in the blood. And we can't be holding the likes of Evan or Hannah back.
No, it's not good enough. It's not good enough.
In terms of internet, like, they're on about rural development, etc. But how can they do the development if they can't even get broadband and nobody's going to want to live out in rural areas?
And the definition of people living in rural areas, they are the keepers of the land, and we need them to stay there as the keepers of the land, environmentally as well as agriculturally. There's lots of reasons why they want us to stay rural.
You see how many post offices, local shops and things are closing down, but the reason they're closing down is because there's not enough people who avail of them, and the reason there's not enough people who avail of them is because they can't even get simple broadband out where they live. Like,
Evan, I hope you're considering a political career. Please run the country. You see, it's just we can see it, and again, it's just it's common sense. It's common sense. Now, speaking of things commonsensical or not, we're following up on a little item we did last week: the Portlaoise losing the X12 bus service.
Yes.
We had 3 local politicians get back to us.
Fantastic.
Their quotes are scrolling on the screen now. So Senator Pippa Hackett, she's a super junior minister. She got back to us today. Sean Fleming, TD, got back to us yesterday. Brian Stanley got back to us yesterday. So the 3.
That's fabulous.
But the other local politicians haven't replied to date.
Okay, well, look, it's only been a week. We'll give them time. They could be looking into it.
I know.
I'm not saying give up.
No, I think you said that tongue in cheek because, of course, the route stops this week, the end of this week.
Oh God, yeah, it does.
It's gone. And this is my worry, is that people are going, oh, this is only a temporary measure. No, this is the Bus Eireann service from Dublin Airport through Dublin City down to Limerick, serving Portlaoise. Gone. Will be history. In fact, what really brought it home to me during the week is I was strolling around town doing a little bit of shopping and met this wonderful Bus Eireann employee at the Blue Bridge in Portlaoise. And what was he doing? Taking down the bus timetable at the bus
Oh
stop.
my God.
That really brought it home to me.
That's sad, Sean.
And I mean, we have to publicize the fact that it's we're losing it. We have to kick up a fuss because history has taught me now that once a thing goes, it very rarely comes back.
Well, you know what it is now that the students can't travel to Maynooth was really our discussion last week, and to Dublin to go to college. They can all have this wonderful broadband so they can work from home in Laois, isn't that right?
Yeah, catch 22.
I couldn't resist it. It's just both things go hand in hand, like.
Yeah, but
and the bus was full. It's not like the bus wasn't being used. The bus was full. It was viable.
Well, you're going from the biggest airport in the country through the biggest city in the country to the third biggest city in the country, beside the second largest airport in the country, and you're losing a lot of money. Like, questions really need to be put to the Bus Eireann management. How are you losing money on that route? If you're losing money in that bus route, there's no chance for any other bus company running any other route in the country, basically. Because you've like 2/3 of the Ireland's population is along that route, along that corridor.
Isn't Bus Eireann still semi-state?
Yeah, it's badly run. I don't care if it's public, private, just run.
Yeah,
run
but
the thing right.
Isn't it still semi-state?
Yeah. Now, on to things more positive. We have to change the tune because we don't want people to switch off. The survey we had a wonderful survey come out today. They surveyed 1,000 secondary school students in Ireland last year. The results are up, and the 5 most the 5 emojis that those students picked for 2020 were. We have it up on the screen. The emoji. So you have the sick emoji, the confused emoji, the crying emoji, the poo emoji, or is poop? What's the technical term?
I'm too old, Evan.
They're on the screen
Oh,
there.
that's me.
Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot there. The 5 emojis of 2020. Hopefully, the autumn and winter 2021 emoji will be yippee. Is there a yippee? Get me to the pub quick.
Is there an
Celebratory one.
A celebratory emoji, and that's all my little bits and pieces there.